Good evening and welcome to another episode of the Vigilante Dialogues. I am your host, Shaina Smith, welcoming you to the National Boardroom. With me tonight, I have a colleague, and he is no stranger to, I should say, media, not on TV. But I would like to say good evening to the esteemed Julian Willock, former permanent secretary, as well as the chairman of Advanced Marketing. How are you, sir?
Thank you, and thanks for inviting me. I know this was long in coming. We spoke about me coming on for 2 years now.
I think that's about right.
So I finally made it. And as you know, nothing happens before it's time.
Yes, and I am looking forward to a very vibrant conversation tonight. We've been talking about some different topics as far as current affairs, and persons know me. I'm always into the national development of our country, and I think you're passionate as well about the same in terms of seeing the Virgin Islands realize its fullest potential.
I am indeed very passionate and want to play my role in making sure that we build this great little nation, as one politician usually says.
Yes, that's a well-known phrase now. So let's jump right into it. Let's go on a global stage and talk about Brit exits. What are your thoughts there about the United Kingdom now leaving the European Union, even though it still has to be negotiated and a lot of bureaucracy has to take place for another 2 years? But what are your thoughts there?
I think that it caught the intellectual class, the business class. It caught most people by surprise because the European Union and the European Union law, for example, is so integrated within the United Kingdom system, and that has been a big step forward for the United Kingdom actually to vote to leave the European Union. And it's not a simple matter. They have voted to leave with over 1 million plus votes. So that is certainly a message.
But I found it an interesting statistic that it was only 36% of the electorate that voted.
Well, that's true. Well, in democracies, you will always play with statistics about how much people vote here and how much people vote there. But at the end of the day, if 20% vote, the majority of that 20% will rule. And I have two thoughts about it. One, while one has to respect democracy and the will of the British people, the now foreign minister, Boris Nelson, I think he was the lead on getting out of the European Union. And just looking at that campaign, how he, to me, in my opinion, preyed on the fears of people, the issue of immigration, the issue of taking back your country, these kind of buzzword or code words. But again, at the end of the day, you must say that we live in a democratic society, and they have decided to leave the European Union. It's unfortunate for the Virgin Islands. I think our Premier outlined some of the things that we would lose.
Yeah, some of the effects that we might feel, particularly in the tourism.
Exactly. But it's what it is, and as you say, they have 2 years to negotiate their way out, and it has resulted also in a new Prime Minister of Great Britain.
Yes, it has. It's resulted in a big political shake-up.
Yes, and she is also, she supported getting out of the union.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's interesting.
It will be, because again now it's almost as if we've just had a general election in addition to the referendum, because the opposition leader, he's under pressure to resign, and some of the other minority parties, their leadership, there's maybe some changes there. Scotland is talking about still wanting to have a separate agreement with the European Union. So
you see, what's interesting too, that Scotland voted. Their vote, if you just pull out their vote, they voted to stay in the European Union, while the other parts of the United Kingdom voted to, depart. And they have a unique system out there, and we sort of follow the model in the Caribbean, which is the Westminster system, that the political parties are the one decide their leader, and then that leader becomes the prime minister, or in our case it will be the premier, or in the Caribbean country the prime minister. So they had an internal election in the Conservative, or what some people refer to as the Tories, and they have decided to go with Miss May, and she now becomes the prime minister. And I think it was a bold decision also of former Prime Minister Cameron, for him to say, okay, and he said it before
Yes, that he would
if
step down.
I lose the vote, I will step down.
Yes,
And he did step down.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some people are fascinated with how quickly a prime minister is changed in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
You know, remember when the Tories were in, they got rid of Margaret Thatcher.
Mm-hmm.
There was a time too that they got rid of, was it Gordon Brown?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so they have had their evolution.
Yeah.
And it's the Westminster system of politics, of government.
Yes, it keeps things interesting.
Very much so, very much so.
Keeps things interesting. So we'll continue to watch that dialogue and see what happens, you know, over the coming months and year in terms of, again, the fallout. Because I know one of the biggest things was that people were really nervous about the following week was how the financial markets were reacting and the pound losing its value. And, you know, the different trade, the impacts on economies as well as trade.
One of the things that I fully support is that I think that the Premier said that we need to be around the table when the negotiations are happening.
Yes.
And I hope that that's just not words or another press release, that we have to fight to be around the table when the United Kingdom is negotiating its way out of the European Union, because there are some direct and indirect effects for our territory.
Yeah.
So we have to insist on that.
Yeah, that those are maintained as much as possible.
Of course.
That's very key. That's very key. So let's come across the Atlantic now to the U.S. presidential campaign. I'm sure you've been watching this closely.
I have spent a few minutes.
They lost me a couple months ago, to tell the truth, but you know, every once in a while, if I'm watching BBC, they take a split second to go over and say what's happening. But I think the conventions are coming up over the summer. So
the American political system is quite interesting. I mean, a little different in a sense from the British Westminster system, where they go through primaries, where in the United States, in the United Kingdom, for example, the party itself chooses the leader. But in the United States now, they go through each state primary, where the members of that party in each state, through primaries or caucus, will choose. And as of now, we have the Republican seems like it's going to be Donald Trump, and on the Democratic side, it seems like it's going to be Hillary Rodham Clinton. And it reminds me a little about what happened in the UK with the kind of politics in terms of the fear-mongering, in terms of the divisive politics. And that seems to have won out the day, because Donald Trump, I mean, he is in your face. He tells it like it is. You don't always agree with him, and some of the things you will want to, you know, not say. I mean, how can you single out one country and say that they bring rapists and all the other things that he's been saying? And I'm sure you can find those people that he has described also in Canada. But you see that he's only picking on one country. So it's interesting. And Hillary is not new to the political system of America. She's been there. She's done that.
First Lady, Secretary of State.
Yeah, whether the American public now is ready for one, a woman president, or two, whether they want to go back to Hillary. You know,
in terms of back to the Clinton camp.
the Clinton camp.
Or what is being termed as a third term of Obama.
So it's going to be a very, very interesting election. In my view, as of today, it can go anywhere. A lot of people are saying that Donald Trump will lose, he'll get away, but this election could go anywhere. If you follow closely the American political system, you have these shifts from left to right. After Reagan, you had 1 year Bush, and then you had a switch to the Democrats. You had 4 years of Bill Clinton, and you switched back to George W. Bush. So now with 8 years of Barack Obama, the critical question now whether we're switching back to the right. And the indications are it may, but it's yet still too early to call.
Yeah, and I think the division even in the Republican Party itself, as far as it fully supporting its nominee, is going to be interesting to see how it comes after the convention, you know, whether or not the big decision makers are going to come up behind of him, because I think one of the things I think we'll see is that there will be a high turnout for this election.
There will be a high
voter turnout.
And Donald J. Trump, his whole campaign has been fighting against the establishment. So you know, when you upset the political class, the establishment, that there's problem. And you've had, surprisingly, a lot of persons, senators, congressmen, former presidents, etc., who are being kind of neutral. Some who have been coming out against him.
Campaigning against him,
etc.
Yes, exactly.
So it's an interesting dynamic. But again, at the end of the day, you have to respect the grassroots and the will of the people. Same thing in the United Kingdom with the European Union decision. The political establishment supported staying in the union. However, the grassroots, and I don't know if that the advocates like the Boris Yeltsins were able to play on their fears and that stuff, but the grassroots and the anti-establishment has won in those two cases.
And I think that's also a lesson in terms of, again, talking about voter turnout, because the fact that less than half of the voting public showed up, I think they took it for granted that this vote would have gone remain and didn't go to the polls. Because now, obviously, they mobilized their people, and they showed up in their numbers.
Well, as a political consultant, one of the things that I tell my client is you have to get your voters out. You got to get your voters to the poll. If you don't get your voters to the poll, your message could be superior, your message could be A, B, or C. You have to get your voters to the poll. And Donald Trump message resonated in the United States. The anti-European Union resonated with the voters of the United Kingdom, and they won the day.
Yep. Very, very, very interesting.
Interesting indeed.
Very interesting. So we're going to keep an eye on that. By August, everything's going to start to really ramp up and get intense because their elections is in November. And we're going to stick a pin in talking about politics because I have on here to talk about some political reform here at home. And I think in terms of making persons aware of the differences between the two systems when we talk about the UK versus the US. Because I think sometimes people think it's an amalgamation that we have here that really needs to be explained in terms of the pros and cons between the two systems. So we'll look at that. But I think we'll take a commercial break right now and get a word from our sponsors and be right back. Welcome back. You tuned in to the Vigilante Dialogues. I am your host, Shaina Smith. And with me, I have my colleague, Julian Willock, who is the chairman of Advanced Marketing and a former permanent secretary. So we've been talking this evening about, I guess we started off with the global politics, so now we're going to make it local, so to speak. So we're going to talk a little bit about current affairs and what's happening here at home and where we eventually see ourselves in the future. A few months ago, you had an interview, I think it was on BBC, talking about the Panama Papers and the effect on the financial services industry. Tell us how that came about and what were your afterthoughts in terms of that interview and what was said.
Well, the BBC contacted the editor of Virgin Islands News Online and wanted to speak about the Panama Papers because they claim that they were having difficulties in anyone from the British Virgin Islands speaking to them about the Panama Papers and its effect on the BVI and the whole offshore financial sector. So the editor referred it to me. And I've tried to put them on first to government official, but that was not successful. So I agreed to interview because I'm afraid enough after following and studying the financial services sector to at least speak on the financial services sector of the Virgin Islands. So that's how that came about. It was an interesting interview, somewhat hostile, somewhat informative. But what I took out of that interview is that the people in Great Britain, some of the people, have a view of what goes on in the overseas territories, and they have their own view as to what happens with the financial services sector. I mean, the reporter claims, for example, that Virgin Islands, we build $100 million hospital, and we're a little in effect, he's saying we're a little poor country and it must be dirty money. So he thinks that the financial services in the Virgin Islands is used for people to launder money. And the fact of the matter is it's totally...
government at that,
Yeah, it's totally opposite. The Virgin Islands, and everybody knows this, and our political leaders have said this over and over again, that we are the most regulated. We comply with every international standard. All the international bodies that have been set up to make sure transparency, BVI is at the table. So it's just amazing the view that they have. Taken, for example, that hospital. That hospital took 12 years, 2 loans, 2 administration to build. So it was quite interesting to see how they think about us in these territories. That's why it's so important for us to continue to fight to protect the sector, and that our political leaders and those in the industry should not shy away. And there must be a continuous education so that anyone at any time can speak about the sector. They don't have to be calling the premier every day to speak about it, or Lorna Smith or Robert McTavish. That all of us, the average citizen, should be briefed, should be au fait, should take time to study it so that we can defend the homeland. Because the attack on the financial services for us is attack on our pockets, it's attack on our economy. That contributes to over 40–50% of our revenue. And with our dicey financial situation, where some people are saying the treasury, the government is broke, with our dicey situation, imagine now if we lose the financial services sector. That could cause a lot of anxiety, have major effects for infrastructure development, for schools, for money for salaries, money for pension. So it's a serious issue. And we have to step up our defense of our legitimate financial services sector, where we are part of the global economy and where we contribute to the global flow of capital. We have to be serious about that.
And I'm glad you said that, because, you know, with the onslaught of reporters now that started coming in and looking for interviews, you know, if they speak to the wrong person, so to speak, well, not necessarily that they was the wrong person, but that they don't have the correct information to be able to explain, well, this is what financial services is about. And furthermore, you know, the UK and all of Europe and all these major developed countries that are always attacking the offshore jurisdictions, they also have the financial services as an industry in them.
And it's so amazing that the blatant double standard, you know, London, for example, where he was interviewing me from, all laws are tougher than London. Paris, all laws are tougher than
At that point, he cut the interview. I
Delaware in the United States, you can start an account on the internet. You know, so all laws are so rigid in terms of all ability to regulate
compared to them,
and all transparency. And here they are, the developed countries beating up on us. I mean, it's just amazing. But it's in line with, you know, the history of the world, and one study history, they can make their own judgment as to why they're doing that. You know, so it's in line with the history.
I think, and I agree with you in terms of us, you know, squaring our shoulders and speaking into the mic very clearly and loudly.
We should never back away from defending our legitimate industry.
We don't have anything to hide.
Exactly, we're transparent. Why should they be even calling me? You know, I'm just a little fly on the wall. They should go talk to the industry.
Well, they figure you in media, so you know something.
You know, they should go talk to the professionals in the industry. I mean, I happen to be au fait enough to know to defend the industry, but our government, and whether this government or the next, should never, and the people in the industries, and they don't only have to be the government, the private sector. They should also be the private sector who specialize and who operate in the financial service
it's their
industry.
livelihood.
They should be out there too, doing interviews and defending all legitimate business.
Very, very, very key. So what are your thoughts now then with the latest headline I saw in the news was about now that one of our local banks is not wanting to do business with certain firms in regards to closing out
I didn't see that.
Yes, I think it was CIBC was in the Beacon. I was reading.
I didn't see that on my apologies.
This was last week. Apparently they've been doing a story, and it's
they didn't want to do what?
That they're closing accounts of certain companies, saying that they're not able to do due diligence. But a source in one of the companies is saying that it's because of the Panama Papers. And these companies have they work with Panamanian companies that do financial services. So there does seem to be some type of difficulty there, because then now that impacts the incorporation process, because then you can incorporate a company, but then you need a local bank account.
Well, if that is
to be able to do business.
Well, if that is so, then I think that may be a step not in the right direction, because all of the banks, I believe, should have a regulator and a compliance officer and people who are responsible for dealing with those things. So if there are things that caught, I'm sure, and obviously you have the Financial Services Commission, who are the national regulators. So as I said, I don't have all the details on that, but that's something I'm definitely going to check on.
Yeah, definitely we have to keep an eye on that, because what it is they're saying is that the bank actually said that they don't have
a compliance officer?
the persons to do due diligence and know who is basically who's the beneficial owners of the company is what I'm gathering.
Okay, okay.
So, and I'm guessing again these things are coming out of the OECD member states, right? So that's where this pushback is coming, because they're terming it as, I should say, World Bank, and it's a good article because it's something where it's saying that the World Bank and the CDB, they're saying that they're seeing this in the offshore jurisdictions where banks are de-risking themselves, as if to say now that, you know, the majority of persons who do business in offshore companies, you know, are somehow doing something illegal. So you don't want to take a chance as the bank to be caught up in this. So
I got you.
But it was very detailed in terms of the article, so it's something for us to check out and see what's happening.
I'm definitely going to pull that article and read it, but I still maintain that the Virgin Islands remain one of the most regulated financial services system in the world. And I maintain that from the information that I have, and I know that to be true.
Yeah. So where do we see it going, though? Because I was to a seminar the other day, Conversations with Business BVI, and the CEO for Vistra Group, out of Hong Kong, was talking about the decline that they're seeing in terms of new incorporations as well as renewals. Part of it being the downturn actually in the China economy. He was saying it was based on their stats, their company stats. 50% of it is related to that, and then 35% was about with the same banks, because I think that was one of the reasonings behind now having the Bank of Asia, because now the Chinese, in terms of Chinese incorporations, having difficult time being able to have having the banking structure in place here now locally to be able to conduct business.
My understanding is for the last 3 to 4 years there have been a decline in registration. The government and even the private sector will have to come up with creative ways as to how can we stop that trend, one, and two, government as in terms of policy will now have to be talking seriously about diversifying our economy, not just saying it for saying its sake, because I think within the past 5, 6, 7 years, we just use a lot of buzzwords, and no one is focusing on making it a reality. People
in terms of having a plan.
And having a plan. People have been talking about diversifying the economy for 10 years, and we're still stuck with just the two pillar, tourism and financial services. Agriculture has been looked at, offshore fishing has been looked at, and I don't know if they have been given the serious attention that they require. But we have to not just come out with these buzzwords about diversifying the economy. We must make it happen. Because, as I said again, with our situation where all indications are that we're facing financial crisis in terms of money in the treasury, with the financial services under attack, that's one of our major pillars. Imagine the anxiety if the big powers are able to pull that away from us. We will be in trouble. We don't have oil, we don't have gas, we don't have any of the natural, you know, no one have discovered gold yet any place in the Virgin Islands. So we have to ensure that we protect the industry, the tourism industry and the financial services sector, while seriously focusing on how we obtain another pillar. And it can't just be talk. You know, there's too much chatter. Everybody think they're brighten up and I'm talking about this and that, and then when you peel it away, there's really nothing there, and nothing is happening. Exactly. So we got to, and that's why I said to you earlier, to one of the things that I want to talk about is that we have to change the dialogue in the BVI. When I say change the dialogue, is that we have to talk about how do we make life better for all Virgin Islanders? How do we think about what happens in the next 10 years? Where we have in the Virgin Islands, where would the Virgin Islands be in the next 10 years? And also we have to start asking the question, were we better off 4 years ago than we are today? Those are some important questions that we have to ask. And that the political class must change the dialogue from simply divisive politics, from simply just fighting to get re-elected, from simply using the House of Assembly as a place to attack citizens, a place to attack businesses you don't like. We have to change the dialogue where we're talking about our people, where we're talking about our economic survival. Once the flag douse, we as people want all the same thing. I don't care where you're from.
At the end of the day.
Whether you're from the Caribbean, whether you're indigenous, whether you're from Europe, America, China, Philippines, we all want the same thing. We want a better life for our family and ourselves. We want to be able to pay our bills. We want to have and make sure that our children are properly educated. We want to make sure that our mothers and fathers are safe in their home. We want to be able to drive from Western to Eastern on decent road. We all want the same thing. And we have to shift the focus from political self-interest, you know, it's about me and I, to about how do we build a country? How do we unite the country? How do we bring the country together?
Yeah.
And that can't be just buzzword. We have to implement policies to make that happen. And our political language and our political dialogue must also reflect that.
Yeah.
And if we're not going down that road, then everything else becomes divisive.
Yeah.
Even governing will be hard.
Yeah, because, and I'm glad you made that point, because then it's something where, like, through programs such as this one, where we want it to not just be the language of politicians, but the language of the public.
Yeah.
Because if the public understands what's at stake, what's on the line, then their expectations change and the politicians have to follow suit.
Yeah.
Because then
Wait,
we start to ask questions like, okay, so what are you going to do about crime? Because, you know, when we look at the newspapers, you know, there's an escalation in gun violence here in our territory over the last year. And it's something that we should never accept as the norm, you know.
And we are close also to the U.S. Virgin Islands, and I think that they have more gun violence than us, but it's slowly but surely
it starts small,
sweeping into our shores.
Exactly.
Yeah, they may have 10 a day,
yeah,
they
but
have one.
That started small at some point
exactly,
too.
Exactly.
You know?
So I totally agree with you. The issue of crime, and it can't be the issue of crime is okay. We're going to simply promote some police officers, or some guy's going to make an announcement. We're going to hire new Caribbean officers. That can't be a crime solution. We have to talk about resources. The government must step up to the plate and properly fund the Royal Virgin Islands Police Force. That is there. We got to talk about training. You know, you have to provide the police force with the resources you need. You can't just be tinkering at the end and trying to play politics and saying what you think is right
and
for the moment.
Leadership
you know,
in that department is very key as well.
Leadership is very key.
It's something where, you know, if there is deficiency there when it comes to the leadership of any department, it is not going to be effective in its function.
Yeah, we have to put aside the nice fancy talk, and we have to make things happen. We have to plan. We have to fund things.
Yeah.
Those are the key. Take, for example, a year ago or so, we had the major layoff in Virgin Gorda, Virgin Gorda Island that I love. We had major layoff, 3 major companies lay off persons in Virgin Gorda. Here is where planning come in. Somebody should have known that within the next 6 months, you're going to have 500 people, for say, looking for jobs. Why couldn't, between the Ministry of Natural Resources and Labor and the Labor Department, get all the resume and skill set from these people, match that to requests for work permits, and eventually at least it'll be a smooth transition. So that's where planning comes, that you're sitting, you know that these layoffs are coming, you know that some hotels are closing because they're going to be renovating. So these are some of the planning policy that you'll do. So you'll have a smooth transition that, okay, we put a pause on work permit because here we have 600 people who worked in 3 establishments in Virgin Gorda. Here's their skill set. They match these jobs that's available, and we make a smooth But
how much notice, and in that situation I was wondering, how much notice does the companies have to give now to even the Labor Department about layoffs?
Well, I don't know what the law
requires.
The new labor code, and that's something I have to check on.
Yeah, because it seemed as if
However,
it was right down to that last point where you...
However, it's all about relations.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that a major hotel like Little Dix Bay are going to shut down for a couple months, not in season, and not say something to a government official, a minister of government. I would not accept that. It's about relation. Not going to say something to the representative of the district. You know, I find it hard to believe.
Yeah.
So it's about passing on information and communicating. Everything in your country don't have to be about politics.
Yeah.
If you had this information before the election, start working on it. Everything, you can't build your country simply on politics.
No. You can't.
Who you like.
Yeah.
You get up in the House of Assembly one day, you don't like Shaina, you beat up on Shaina. You don't like Company A, you beat up on Company A. You know, you cannot build a country like that. You have to build a country in bringing people together.
Around a vision.
No, around a vision, around ideas, around action, making
Yeah.
things happen, and making things happen for people, not simply making things happen with your own political agenda. You know, your re-election. You want to be the leader. You want to be this. That's not how you run a country. You got to be genuine, you have to love people, and you have to love your country. And once you have those ingredients, people will follow. People will follow you.
Yeah, that sounds like leadership.
Yeah, leadership indeed.
Tourism, you just touched on it in terms of those closures that we had within the last 12 months. And we've had quite a bit. I think being that tourism was that first economic pillar in terms of moving us from off of grant and aid in terms of assistance from the UK and being able to be self-sufficient and took us, you know, to the point of where financial services then joined and exceeded it. Where do you see the tourism industry going? And let's talk a little bit about those the key infrastructure projects that are happening now or have happened, which were the cruise pier and the airport project. With the expansion of the runway. What are your thoughts there on those?
The cruise ship project, and I haven't found anyone yet who opposed the cruise ship project. The only issue with the cruise ship project is the cost. Most of the people who have looked at it know that it cannot and should not have cost $82.9 million and counting. And remember, it's still an incomplete project.
Yeah.
So that to me has soured the goodwill of that project. But it's needed. Even going back 10 years, the party in power at the time, the Virgin Islands Party, had made provision for an expansion. It may not have been as elaborate
with the design
as what is there now, but all governments knew that we needed
to do something.
If we're going to maintain our place in the tourism sector, especially cruise tourism, which is critical to our development.
Yeah, because
so
we watch where St. Kitts, Villa Dock, we watch St. Martin expand
Jamaica, St. Martin,
so
everywhere. Nevis is now considering building one. So all over the place, people are, you know, so we had to remain competitive. But I think the public got sour with the costs and all the issues surrounding that cost. The airport expansion project, that's another interesting debate.
You think we need it as far as supporting our economy?
We have to do something about airlift. And I think we need to have a debate as to what that is. Whether it's expanding the runway, other ideas have come forward about building a new airport or expansion on another island, for example, Antigua. That is something that needs to be looked at in terms of its economic, whether it's practical, whether it can be done. So there needs to be a genuine debate.
What about an airline, bringing back our local airline or expanding on one that we have?
Well, I just see that the government has invested $7 million in our airline, so I don't know if that is considered a local airline. I mean, it carries, what's it, BVI Airways, I don't know. But $7 million is hefty to invest in an airline, and I know that the opposition leader, Honorable Fraser, asked some very critical and important questions on that, and I think I read something 2 days ago where he was saying that the answers he got from our premier was misleading. You know, so we need to have a serious look about that agreement, and we need to have a robust debate based on facts and figures about the airport, whether the airport expansion, whether we can sustain it.
I think it'll be good and helpful in that public debate to have the business case that was done, because then you'll be able to see the pros and cons, because no project has all benefits. There's always the costs that go along with those benefits. So it would be helpful, I think, in terms of us debating what to do.
My gut feeling is saying that we need the airport expansion. But I think that the public have not been provided with enough information as to why we need it, how is it going to increase or tourism product, whether there is a market for direct flight from Miami, New York, Atlanta to the BVI. You know, all those things have not been forthcoming. And I think it makes the elected persons, or the political class, as I call them, it makes their job easier if you just simply come to the public with information. Everything seems to be such a big secret. You know, everything is hidden, and if civil servants will tell me, well, you know, everything is locked down. Senior officers in government, permanent secretaries, even don't have information on things under their portfolio. I mean, it's amazing. So there seems to be a big secrecy about the country, and I think it raises its own suspicion.
Yeah.
We have to
be transparent.
We have to be transparent.
Yeah.
We have to break down barriers. The airport's going to be built. We're going to use taxpayers' money. If it's a loan, we're going to have to pay it back.
One way, yeah.
One way or the
so
other.
whether it's cash
Exactly.
or it's a loan, it's taxpayers' money.
So you got to be transparent. You got to provide information. Obviously, everything you do in the BVI or anywhere, you're going to have your critics. I have a client down in St. Kitts, and you know, he gets a lot of licks, as we will say, a lot of criticism. But you know, and I said to him, that's the opposition job. Their job is to find faults in what you do, because they are supposed to be the government in waiting. So that's the system you're in. So you're not to get flustered, but it doesn't mean you're going to lock up. You're going to be divisive. You're going to stop talking. You're going to hide information from the public. You're going to answer questions in the House untruthfully. You know, that's a whole new politics in the country, where politicians are now actually answering questions untruthfully. That's a whole new, I can't even find a word, but that's a whole new issue.
So we're saying that that's what's happening now?
It has happened.
It has happened in the past.
It has happened. You know, so we have to be open up. We have to be transparent. And I said to any political party, your job should be to try and make governing easier. Not go pick fights with those who oppose you. See how you can bring them along. See how you can explain to them what the issues and what you are doing, you know.
And why you're doing it.
And why you're doing it, you know. Have a dialogue. You're not going to win everybody over. You know, you got people on set, you know. Going back to United States politics, you got the right wing, you got the left wing, and everybody setting their ways on the left and the right. But in the middle, how can we build
where can the consensus be built?
Yes, of course. And then move forward on those things. And I find in our new political classes that people are now dug in. You know, I don't like a politician. I don't like this person. I don't like this media house. So I'm going to stay away from there. You know, you can't govern like that. Especially if we're entering a period now when we have to be talking about self-determination.
Which is very interesting. It's a good place. We're going to take a commercial break and hold that thought, and we'll be right back after this word from our sponsors. Welcome back. You're tuned in to the Vigilante Dialogues. If you're just tuning in, you've missed a very stimulating conversation that I've been having with Mr. Julian Willock, a former permanent secretary in the British Virgin Islands Public Service and the chairman of Advanced Marketing. And like myself, he's very avid when it comes to talking about politics, but I think it's because we're very passionate about our country at the end of the day.
Yes.
Good. So the conversation we've been having in terms of looking at our development as a country and some of our current affairs and, you know, what the future would hold for us. And, you know, when we talk about future now, a lot of times the topic of independence and self-governance is coming up. What are your thoughts about that as far as constitutional reform and in terms of the system that we have now versus the things that you think that we should be starting to look at?
Self-determination is a must. And my generation and your generation must see in the next 10, 12, 15 years self-determination. But the challenge for us, the challenge right now with the political class, is that there's a mistrust of the current political class. And I'm talking about both sides.
Across the board?
Yeah.
Okay.
And whether or not we have the people now that can take us across to independence. The issue of transparency in government remains an issue. The issue of how divisive some politicians are, how unscrupulous some are using the House of Assembly to advance their own agenda and attack citizens, attack businesses. So there's a fear. I was in Virgin Gorda some days ago, and I threw out the issue, and I don't like to say independence, I say self-determination. I threw out the issue of independence to some folks, and these some senior folks, and they were living, no, not now, and what we're going to live off, and you know. So there needs to be an education about independence. but we have to develop the trust first in the political class, whether we have the right set of people now to take us to independence.
To start that process.
Eventually, we're going to have to go there. I'm a big supporter of self-determination. But what I'm being told as I go around this country, that there is this fear, can't trust the politician. Right now, some of our citizens, civil servants could run onto the governor if there's a complaint, or they can go to the complaints commissioner. But if some of the politicians are getting away with this reckless behavior, the overspending, $1 million on a wall, if they can get away with those things now, imagine it under independence. You know, so that's the fear. So we have to change the dialogue where we lead in and bring in our people. And that's what, and you used a very good word earlier, leadership. That's where leadership come in. Now, looking at the 13 members of the House of Assembly, I'm not sitting here and saying that they're all bad. There are 2 to 3 persons in there now that I have the confidence in that can lead us to that well. But still, that's not enough. We need a national dialogue about independence. We need people, and unfortunately, perhaps we don't have, like in the other Caribbean countries, the Eric Williams, the other Manning, exactly, you know, but it doesn't mean that with the 13 members of the House that we can't find within that body people who can bring us there. And I think there are.
I want to interject and even add to that. I think we had our own versions in the HR Pens and the Fonsecas, because these were the trailblazers, as it were, when we came out of the Leeward Island Federation. And basically had to strike it out on our own as our independent territory. So I think it's something that we can do again if we
we can. That's why I say we have 13 members now, and I will say there are about 3 to 4 in there that I can have confidence in that can lead us to that wealth.
And you would say we build on that?
You build on that, but that is not enough.
No.
You know, that is not enough to convince, because independence is a serious step.
It is.
You got to think about the costs. You got to think about your foreign policy. You got to think on your alignment.
And you got to think about what is the option if we don't, because
exactly.
the UN has mandated for many decades now that all those developed countries such as the US and the UK decolonize.
Yes, yes.
So if we don't go independent, then we will end up as something, I believe it's a province is what they became in the French
I think there
and the
is
Dutch.
some option there to align with one of the bigger powers.
Yeah.
And the United Nations Decolonization Group or Committee that's ongoing, they have meetings occasionally, and I'm sure 1 or 2 persons from here attend those meetings. But the issue of self-determination is serious, and we have to get
it's
there.
not something that we can just leave to chance.
No.
Because the question will come hard and fast at some point where we will have to answer the question.
We will.
As far as what do we want to do.
But the problem is that the political class must now start to prepare its people for that. And whether or not we have the confidence that outside of 3 or 4 of them who are now in the House of Assembly, can we go to independence now with who we have there, and the kind of reckless behavior, the kind of disregards for the courts, the kind of disregards for the Public Service Commission, the kind of disregard they have for the institutions now. And when you're talking about independence, you have to have strong institutions that protects your people and protect all people. I read some time ago a politician said you can't protect locals. Well, elected official must protect everyone. Maybe next week they will say they can't protect women. Maybe the following week they may say they can't protect children. How can you go independent with those kind of thinking, that kind of dialogue? You have to fight to protect all the citizens, whether they're from the Caribbean, whether they're black, the white, the women, the children, they're indigenous, they're locals. Your mandate must be to protect everybody. And your policies must reflect that.
Yeah.
So you can't single out locals break the law only because they're local, using the fact that they're locals. I mean, how can you practice that kind of divisive politics? That kind of what I regard as unscrupulous politics. We have to bring the country together. We have to unite the country. We have to protect everyone. Everybody at the end of the day, Shaina, wants the same thing: a decent life for your family. They want good health services. They want good roads, good schools. They want a decent paying job, a livable wage. Everybody wants the same thing.
Yeah.
So let's see how we can build on that. And if that is your if you as a politician build on those things and satisfy those needs, you'll be elected from now until when you're ready to retire. You won't have to worry about anything, who supports you or who don't support you. Do the things that you said you will do for the country, and you'll be all right.
So tell us tonight as we wind up. I know you are, you're active politically. You're a political activist.
Oh, I don't know about political activists. I'm a little fly in the wall.
You're a political activist.
I don't know.
Don't try to sugarcoat it.
Sure, I'm a little fly on the wall.
Okay, so he's a fly on the wall. So we're gonna ask you, Mr. Fly. At any point, are you considering getting involved now in the political arena?
What do you mean, to run for office?
To become a politician.
Well, I am not prepared to make an announcement about my political future. However, what I will say is that there are a million ways to serve your country.
Okay.
And you don't have to be a politician to serve your country. I have said over and over again that there are many people out there, captains of industries, there are non-profit organizations, the Family Support Network. They do good things. They contribute a lot to this country. There are coaches out there that does a lot in terms of developing young people.
So different tiers of leadership.
Exactly. So my point is that you don't only have to run for office if you love your country. There are a wide range of stuff that you can do, a wide range of contributions that you can do to help develop your country. So it's not, they're public servants doing tremendous things for this country. They're not in front of the camera every day. You don't hear their name, they don't jump in front of the camera for a press release every day, but they're doing meaningful work. And I will argue that there's a lot of non-government organizations that are doing more meaningful work than some of these politicians you see running around making noise every 5 minutes. I will
But
venture
you wouldn't
to
be
say,
one of them though, if you decide to.
well, if I decide to run, the objective must be to serve your country and love your people and do what you said you're going to do.
You're gonna do.
Yeah, if you can't do that, then you're wasting time. You just become another politician, another status quo. You know, but there are a million ways
to serve.
to
To be called a politician sometimes nowadays is not a very good thing.
It's not a very good thing because the perception is that you're not doing what you're supposed to. You're simply dividing the country. Your politics are unscrupulous. You're using the power and the great opportunity that you have not to build up, but to break down. Not to bring the people together, but to simply marginalize those that you don't like. You get up and you fight them.
So what would you do differently? And then we're going to have to go and have a
What I will do differently
Yeah.
is that I will try my best that my policy reflect bringing people together and raising the standard of living. I said it before. All the citizens of this beautiful country wants the same thing. Good, decent health care, livable wage, make sure that their families are all right. They want to send their children to school. They want to be able to pay their bills. That's we want
good quality of life.
Good quality of life. That's what people want. And if the political class engage in doing that, they don't have to worry about no re-election.
Everybody wins.
Everybody wins. A win-win for everybody. But when you get in the thing of divisiveness,
and
it makes governing harder for you.
Yeah, well, it's true. You have a harder fight.
You have a harder fight. You have to set up yourself where governing is easy.
Yeah.
Obviously, you got to have your critics. You know, there's a set of people in this country you can't. Whatever you say, they're not going to like you. They're going to pick it. That's the nature. That's democracy. That's freedom.
Freedom of speech.
And that has to be celebrated also.
That's true. That is true.
But don't engage in that, build your country. Build your country.
Well, Mr. Willock, it was a pleasure. I'm glad we finally
after 2
had
years.
our conversation. So much more we still have to talk about. So we'll definitely look at having a second part to this. And if you
second part, your viewers could deal with a second part of me.
I think so, because as we said, there's so much to discuss in terms of raising awareness and changing the you can't change the dialogue in one shoe.
You'll be generous.
You can't change the dialogue in one shoe.
Okay. If you insist, Shaina.
If I insist, I know. So, but we're going to have to say good night at this point. And you can always catch us here on Mondays at 9 p.m. as we rebroadcast, Thursdays at 8. And we now have a YouTube channel, so you can check us out on youtube.com. Thank you for tuning in as we change the conversation for a better Virgin Islands.